Hello. If I tell you that your mind has been playing with you entire life, how would you take it? Because today I'm going to talk about a Nobel Prize winner, Daniel Kahneman, who spent 40 years of his life proving it. The story begins in 1969 when he met Tversky, and together they discovered how humans think in a certain way. It all began with the experience of Daniel Kahneman of Holocaust. He has experienced the Holocaust, and because of this he became obsessed with figuring out how humans behave and why they behave in a certain way, why there is a pattern that few humans follow and few take totally different step, totally follow different pattern. Why they do so? Together, they discovered that our mind functions in two different modes, and for the sake of easiness, they named it as System 1 and System 2. Their discovery would revolutionize entire economic, psychological, and patterns of decoding human decision making skill. System 1. It is light, fast, intuitive thinking. There is no effort, totally automatic, and it is used to make snap judgments. System 2, on other hand, is no analytical thinking. It is complex, used for solving problems, questioning assumptions, and it takes mental effort to deal with a problem. It requires time, it requires effort, and it is not a easy thinking process.
System 1 is in charge of 95% of time. It means lightning fast, intuitive thinking that required no effort, automatic kind, and make for snap judgment occupies 95% of your time of decision making. While this quick thinking helped our ancestors survive, it creates massive blind spots in modern time. These blind spots are called cognitive biases.
The first cognitive bias discovered by Daniel Kahneman and his partner is anchoring bias.
If we talk about anchoring bias, it describes people's tendency to rely too heavily on the first piece of information they receive on a topic. Regardless of the accuracy of the information, people use it as a reference point or anchor to make subsequent judgments.
The second cognitive bias discovered by them is loss aversion.
If we talk about loss aversion, it says that humans feel losses two times more intentionally than equivalent gains. It says that you value something you own more than its actual worth because you fear the loss of it. The bias make individuals tend to make decisions based on avoiding losses rather than seeking gains. This can be seen as a possible explanation why people get stuck in a toxic relationship because they feel fear of losing the bond that they have made.
The third cognitive bias they talked about is availability bias.
Availability bias is human tendency to rely on information that comes readily to mind when evaluating situation or making decision. Because of this bias, people believe that the readily available information is more representative of fact than is the case. Availability bias can lead us to believe information that is untrue or make decision without knowing all the facts. For example, if you recently hired or encountered a successful or unsuccessful candidate from a certain group, school, or company, you may assume that all the candidates from that source are similar and base your decision on that. This can be misleading.
The fourth cognitive bias is confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias is quite popular one because it says that we seek information that confirms our existing beliefs and ignore contradictory evidences. This is why two people can look at the same data and reach opposite conclusions. This biased approach to decision making is largely unintentional and it results in a person ignoring information that is inconsistent with their belief.
The fifth cognitive bias they talked about is planning fallacy.
We consistently underestimate how long tasks will take. This is planning fallacy. This isn't poor planning. Our brain are wired to be optimistic about future scenarios. And in this cognitive bias, people underestimate how long it will take to complete a task or project. Our tendency to underestimate the amount of time it will take to complete a task as well as the cost and risk associated with the task is known as planning fallacy. Original plan of Sydney Opera House estimate that it would take 4 years to finish construction. In reality, the timeline for this project was overly optimistic, and the whole thing took 10 years longer to complete than originally estimated. This is what planning fallacy is.
The sixth cognitive bias is hindsight bias.
This is quite interesting one because it says that after an event occur, everyone starts saying that we know it all along. This makes us believe overconfident about our ability to predict the future event. Hindsight bias is a psychological phenomena in which one becomes convinced that they accurately predict an event before it occurred. It causes overconfidence in one's ability to predict other future events and may lead to unnecessary risks.
The seventh cognitive bias is framing effect.
Framing bias says all in its name. Framing effect processes that individuals make decisions based on how an issue is presented or framed rather than on the fact presented. It is a cognitive default to choose an option that is more positively presented or framed. It is quite different with anchoring effect because anchoring is our natural tendency to rely on the first piece of information we receive. Framing is the way that information is presented. Both can influence the perception of value.
The eighth cognitive bias is sunk cost fallacy.
Sunk cost fallacy says that we continue investing in something because of past investments that we have made and not because of the future value that we can see. Let me give you an example. Have you ever realized 30 minutes into watching a movie that you don't enjoy it but continue to watch it anyway? This is because of the sunk cost fallacy. We continue wasting our time on a boring movie since we have already invested 30 minutes of our time into it.
The ninth cognitive bias is overconfidence effect.
Well, this is quite popular one. It says that when someone's confidence in their ability is greater than their actual performance, overconfidence effect comes into play. Overconfidence effect is observed when people's subjective confidence in their ability is greater than their objective actual performance. It is frequently measured by having experimental participants answer general knowledge test questions. Overconfidence can sometimes cause people to become rigid and even dogmatic. For example, 90% of drivers think they are above average. Most students think they will finish assignments earlier than they do. This bias leads to poor planning and risky decisions.
The tenth and last cognitive bias is present bias.
Present bias says that we dramatically favor immediate reward over future ones. For example, we say, I'll start the diet tomorrow, I'll save the money next month, I'll study from tomorrow. Our brain values present pleasure or pain far more than future consequences. This explains most procrastinations and also short term gratifications.
Kahneman and his partner work reveal not only the incredible superpower but also the flaws of our mind. Now that you know this, you have the superpower. So next time when your mind is trying to play with you, play with it.